Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caleb Teskey, and we're double dipping today. And I am joined by Scott Sparks from the Vermont Bud Barn in Brattleboro. Scott, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Caleb. Much appreciated.
It's a pleasure. And I love that you got your logo loaded up there in the background. That looks beautiful, man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I love the logos that were created for me by Canna Planners. Yeah, they've done a great job.
They did all of your logos.
They did all my logos.
Okay.
Yeah, from day
Well,
one. Yeah, I've been
shout out
working
to
with Will about 5 years now.
Wow, 5 years. Holy kid.
Yep.
All right. Nice. Would you mind, before we get into any of the nitty gritty, would you mind sharing your 5-minute life story with us? Maybe tell us a little bit about your background, please, Scott.
Sure. I spent about 45 years in food service prior to doing this. The last 30 of those years were in food service sales, and probably the last 20 of those were in food service sales management. In other words, I managed a sales team that sold food to restaurants and stuff. In the last 10 years of my food service career, I was VP of sales at Black River Produce. A lot of people in Vermont might know the name of that company. They did a lot of farm to table work, when I helped work with a lot of farmers and producers, bringing their product to market, getting them in retail and restaurants. Then they were purchased by a large corporation, and long story short, I had already been through that once with another company I worked for that was bought by the same corporation. So I knew what was going to happen, and I chose to leave. And out of the blue one day, I just turned to a coworker and said, I'm going to open a hemp shop, not even quite knowing what that meant. But that same day, I got a spam email on my work email inviting me to the Northern Colorado Hemp Expo. I took that as a message, and I bought tickets, and I went out in April of 2017 to the Northern Colorado Hemp Expo. I was curious what was going on. I was blown away by how professional it was. It was filled with business people, lawyers, and very professional hemp people at the time. And I came away from there with a good knowledge base. And within a year, almost to the day, I opened up my first business, which was Vermont Hempicurean. And that's how I got here.
And could you sort of walk us through the history of your business here, starting with Vermont Hempicurean, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. So when I was out in Colorado, I saw a lot of CBD, and it was, it might sound odd now, but back in 2017, it was still relatively new. I didn't have any real models to go on. Like, I couldn't say, well, what are these other CBD stores doing? I didn't see any CBD stores. So I kind of had to go with my gut and create what I felt might be a viable, store that people would be attracted to. And I wanted to both sell in-store with a brick and mortar as well as online. And I originally started with a good amount of Colorado products, only because at that time, in late 2017, there weren't many Vermonters growing hemp. I did start out with, some of the, I think it was Loose Farm was one of my first ones, Sun Soil, Elmore Mountain. Off the top of my head, that's Bravo Botanicals. They were some of the first ones. Obviously the next year a lot more came on, but that's kind of how I started there. I had a really hard time finding a landlord. I got refused quite a few times, which was really challenging. But I finally found a great landlord for my first location with the Latches Hotel in downtown Brattleboro.
Well, and so if you don't own your own building, this becomes very complicated, right?
Well, definitely for cannabis, but it wasn't like that with CBD.
Okay.
But the cannabis space, for sure, I can't have a mortgage on a building. That's another chapter.
Yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So maybe we should talk about the Vermont Grow Barn after this, which is sort of your equipment company, or I'll let you describe that.
So kind of fast forwarding. So I had Vermont Hempicurean opened in April of 2018. When I first opened, I had hopes of getting people interested in the whole hemp plant. So I brought in hemp rope, hemp paper, hemp seeds, hemp
Wow.
culinary oil, things like that, trying to, really promote hemp as a solution to some of the planet's problems. And the reality was people didn't care about all those products. And I also, nothing was local because at the time anyway, there was no infrastructure for hemp fiber. So what I did instead was, I sold out of that product, and in place of that in the store, I brought in some grow supplies on a small scale. I was kind of like the convenience store grow supplies, just kind of testing the market. The closest grow supply store to me was either an hour north or about a half an hour south. So I could fill some gaps for people who didn't feel like making the trip to either one of those places. And
What kind of supplies are we talking, Scott?
soil, nutrients, tents, lights. Again, it was a very limited selection. We could order things if people wanted them to, but it was enough that, we had some of the standard basic things and people could usually find what they needed, as long as it wasn't too complicated. And then from there, I realized there was a market and made a choice to open up a full scale store. And that's when I moved, but that's again, a bigger story.
Mm. And now I wanted to thank you first of all, because I've had a really hard time reaching out to people in the southern part of Vermont, which is basically a foreign country to me up here in Morrisville.
Yeah.
And I wanted to thank you for, I talked to Anna McDuff down there at Mountain Grow Cannabis, but really most of the interviews I've done have been northern Vermont, and I really wanted to get your sort of perspective on what's going on down there. So thank you for that, man. And maybe so you're trying to get licensed in the recreational market, is that true?
Yes. So I'm going for 2 licenses right now. I'm going for cultivation, tier 1 indoor, as well as retail. I've been pre-approved for both, and yesterday my retail license application was sent in and accepted by the Cannabis Control Board. Now I have to wait for the questions and any other documentation, or who knows what's next, because the rules keep changing. But I'm feeling very positive, and it's a great weight off my shoulders to have my retail application actually completed and into there, and I hope I can get it soon enough to prepare to open on October 1st.
And I see the state did sort of open that up maybe a little earlier than people expected.
Yeah, out of the blue, about a month early. We got no warning. It's not a problem. It just was a surprise, a good surprise, and better than their alternative. And so I'm glad they did it, and I wanted to get my paperwork in as soon as possible. It just caught me a little off guard, and then there were some paperwork requirements that were a little different than I'd originally seen, so I had to do a few different things.
And now, so you've got the Vermont Hempicurean, which was your hemp business. You've got the Vermont Grow Barn, which is your equipment company, and now you're what we see behind you here, the Vermont Bud Barn. Maybe would you talk to us a little bit about this sort of next evolution?
Sure. So I was located in downtown Brattleboro for 4 years, give or take. I wanted to expand my business to have a adult use cannabis store. I wanted to expand and have a separate full-scale grow supply store. I also wanted to do some cultivation. I couldn't make that happen in downtown Brattleboro. As much as I like to support downtown, it just wasn't a reality. And I also had in my head that I wanted to take away all the obstacles, the obvious ones, like being near a church, being near a school. I didn't know what the rules were going to be, but I figured I'd start with not being near a church, not being near a school, not being near a neighborhood, having plenty of parking, and not causing a traffic problem. I figured if I got some of those big ones out of the way, then the smaller ones that they sent at me wouldn't be as hard to overcome. Rather than trying to put a square peg in a round hole, I just found a place in West Brattleboro. It's a beautiful old red barn. It's built in about 1870.
Wow.
I was lucky enough that a local I don't know if philanthropist is the right word, but someone who buys buildings in Brattleboro that feels they have a lot of value, but probably someone else wouldn't buy and bother renovating. He's
Huh.
done this, so he's come into this barn and built it out for me. We
Wow.
work together to figure out what works best. And so I've been here since February. I moved my Vermont Hempicurean business to a separate store. Vermont Grow Barn has its own store now. We'll be doing cultivation in the barn, and shortly, hopefully, we'll be opening Vermont Bud Barn. So it's kind of like weed is us in this big barn.
And so what about, so you have 3 separate facilities.
Mhm.
Did you build any of those yourself, or were they all ready to go when you moved in?
We had to do a lot of interior build out and a little bit of exterior. I'm having work done in the building. You may hear saws and stuff in the background. They're still actively working on it. So yes, there was definitely construction done to the barn, but
What
the
kind of,
basic things
sorry
were-
to interrupt you, Scott.
No problem.
Could you tell us some of the work that goes into building out one of these facilities?
Well, again, not knowing what the rules are going to be, I'll just focus on the cannabis side. I went and visited a bunch of dispensaries in Massachusetts. I had already previously been to dispensaries in Colorado and California, in Maine, and then I just did like a dispensary crawl with my manager Jeremy, and we actually didn't buy a thing. We went to about a dozen of them down there, and we just kind of walked in, looked around, saw how they were operating, just so we could learn just on the visuals. Then I
Did you tell them
connected-
that when you walked in? Like, hey,
No.
no.
No, I just was a customer. But I also connected with 2 dispensary owners / managers down in Massachusetts that were kind enough to talk to me about, the do's and don'ts, mistakes they made, suggestions, etc. And I've been able to develop a pretty good relationship with them. Granted, they're located within about an hour of me, so I'm a potential competitor. But at the same time, they were nice enough to at least give me some broad information, answer some of my questions, and help me make some decisions. So I did that, and then I tried to just follow the rules, like from what I had seen, even though I don't think it's going to currently be required. I have an entrance hall that you have to get buzzed through. I have a safe room that will have my safe and stuff in it. Currently, that's not required as far as I've seen, but I built it expecting it to be.
And
I think it's smart anyway.
I've seen some other, sorry to interrupt again, but
Yeah.
I've seen other people doing exactly that as well.
Yeah. I just think it's smart anyway for a variety of reasons. So that's the kind of stuff I did. And then again, I'm going to things like NECAN. I've been to Maine, Boston, Vermont multiple times on all of those, talking to people in the industry. And, I've been part of the hemp / cannabis community for 5 years now. So I just network with a lot of different people asking questions all the time.
And can you maybe tell us a little bit about your impressions of the other states' programs, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah. Massachusetts, I guess, it seems fine. I guess I'll talk more like the dispensaries. I found a lot of them to be nondescript. Like I couldn't tell you which one I was in because they all kind of look the same. There was one in particular that I was very impressed with, and it's down in Holyoke, Mass, called Canna Provisions. I think actually Will from Canna Planters did some work with them as well. Beautiful old factory building. Holyoke is an old mill town, factory town.
Yep.
And they took one of the old factory buildings on the canal. They actually left some of the old factory equipment in there and retrofitted it to fit into their dispensary. And they did a really great job. It was unique. I walked in, I was really impressed. It stuck in my mind. Many of the other ones I went in could be a dentist office or a jewelry store or whatever, and I couldn't really tell you where I was.
Mm.
So I kind of was looking for things like that. As far as the quality and how the system works and stuff, I've only bought stuff down there a couple times and it seems fine, no complaints. The only thing I would say is when you went in these stores, it's like most of them had all the same brand. It's like there was no variety. It was like going to a whole bunch of 7-Elevens in the same day. They
And
all had the same thing.
do you think Vermont maybe is pushing towards a different model where we do see a lot of variety?
Yeah, I'm expecting a lot of different brands on the shelves, a lot of variety. Um, I plan on supporting as much of that diversity as I can. Smaller growers. I probably saw more large growers down there, although some of the dispensaries do their own grow and then they sell to others that too. But there's definitely much more corporate going on in Massachusetts. They have multiple stores of the same branding, same ownership, all that.
Mm. And I'm going to just keep pushing through my notes here. I have a note here that is talking about soil and genetics, a degree in agronomy and botany.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was you or.
Yeah. So that's the other, it's not a customer facing business, but the cultivation side of our business is going to be, it's called In the Weeds.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
when we do grow, we'll just be using it in our own facility. I won't be selling it. At least at this point, I don't see that I would be doing that. But we connected with this consultant, cannabis consultant. It's actually, he lives in the same town I live in, next to Brattleboro, and he has quite a reputation around the country and gets flown out all over the place to do consulting on genetics and soils and all that. And he has become a friend of our team, if you want to call it that. And he's going to be helping us create our own soil and work with us on specific genetics. And we're pretty excited about it. And we're really very lucky to have him be so close and be such an expert. He does have a degree in botany and agronomy. And
Is this your guy, Jeremy?
No, Jeremy is my manager. Jeremy's been with me about, well, probably 3.5, 4 years now. And he's going to be the general manager for all the different businesses. This gentleman's name is Matt, and he might be working, I'm sure he's working with some of the other growers in the state as well.
Cool. That's cool to create your own soil. That's something I'm still learning a lot about myself, because
so am I. Yeah.
My mom's a gardener. She's always gardened her whole life, and she's explained some of that stuff to me, and it gets complicated real quick.
Yes.
So I wanted to back it up a little here, because my notes are a little disjointed, but you said that you held your own through this sort of hemp crash here, and you survived the pandemic. I'd like to ask you sort of how you did that.
Yeah, well, kind of the best I could. So basically, we all kind of got shut down like immediately in March there. And it was like, whoa, what are we going to do? So initially, I was at a point where I had a woman, there were only 3 of us working in the store. And the woman who was working with myself and Jeremy had decided she was going to give her notice. And that was right around the same time that everything came crashing down. So all of a sudden it was just me and Jeremy. And initially I told Jeremy, look, just stay home right now. Let me wrap my head around what's going on here and we'll figure it out. So I just then approached him and said, can the 2 of us do this? Can we run this store? Because I think, it's going to be really hard, but because I also have an online business. So that's another whole aspect of my business. But he said, yeah, I'm up for it. So the 2 of us staffed the store, never shut down. we kept it going for, well, almost 2 years with it on our own. And since then, since I've moved, I have 2 more employees now, and I'll be bringing on a bunch more for the Bud Barn. But
How many do you have total, Scott?
right now, I just have 3 because that's all the business warrants. But once I open the Bud Barn, I'll probably be, I'm in the process of trying to hire probably 8 to 10 more.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we just did the best we could with what we had, I guess is the simplest version, but the 2 of us held down the fort and followed the rules and, made it happen. And I had a loyal customer base already, and I gave, curbside option. You could always order online for me.
Oh,
and
during
have it
COVID?
shipped. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have it shipped to, wherever if you didn't want to come in the store. So we
Nice.
sold cannabis masks,
Well, yeah. I got a couple.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you this, man, because I have a note here that says branding matters.
Mhm.
Quality. Vermont dispensaries have to be selective about what they put on their shelves.
Mm-hmm. So I'll back up a second. So from my Black River experience as well as life experience, Vermont sells. Just the name Vermont sells. So as an example, I have Vermont in all my business names purposely, because especially if people don't know where Brattleboro is, I'm right in the corner of Vermont where it meets Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So I get a lot of cross-state traffic. Plus, I'm about 45 minutes or so from New York, crossing the state on the bottom of the state. So I get a lot of different people. It's very easy to get here from Connecticut, etc. It's a big crossroads for a lot of different people from different New England areas. And having Vermont really does give people a perception of quality. As an example, we have lots of people who drive through Massachusetts or live in Massachusetts, knowing full well they can get cannabis there, yet they stop at my store looking for Vermont cannabis. And this has been going on since
Really?
I opened.
You've got people coming up here, even though we're not starting to sell yet, they're still looking for
Right.
Vermont
Oh,
cannabis.
absolutely. Even on a slow day, sometimes between the phone and in-person visits, we can turn away 10 people. So I know the market is there and the perception of Vermont quality is there. And I do believe branding matters, and again, Canna Planters has done a great job with my branding. I think, obviously I'm biased, but I think branding really matters.
And all of the logos for your businesses maintain this sort of consistency that sort of gives you the impression that this is the same product, the same quality that you can come to know from the previous one.
Right. I purposely did that when I worked with Canna Planters. When they did my initial branding for Vermont Hempicurean, I didn't know anything about this. I kind of gave them an idea of what was in my head, kind of a rustic industrial kind of feel, a little retro, but still modern. And they came up with the original Vermont Hempicurean logo, which I get compliments on all the time.
That's beautiful.
And then from there, when I was developing these other businesses, I basically said I want to do the same thing, so they look like sister businesses. And I think they did a great job.
Yeah, I think you pulled that off quite clearly. So I want to say my notes are a little out of order, but we talked about the banking a little bit, and you said you could go deep on the banking, and I'm hoping to hear your sort of thoughts on how it's been dealing with that piece.
Yeah, I'm going to start with hemp because that's where I really started with banking hell. As probably everyone listening to this knows, you really don't have many options for banking. So I went with the hemp business. I went to VSECU, and that's who I used for my CBD business. It was still challenging, but I was able to operate with them. The biggest problem was credit cards, and especially having an online store. I needed a way for people to pay.
Oh, payment processing.
Credit cards were hell. When in the first 2 years I was open, I went through 5 credit card companies, credit card processors.
Just for your hemp? Just for the hemp?
Yeah, just for the hemp. Every single one of them knew that I sold CBD. They all required me to give them tons of paperwork and sign all kinds of forms. And yet, even though each one of them knew what they were getting into up front, every single one of them shut me down with no notice, which was extremely challenging.
Wow.
Then,
Did you have bank accounts closed because of this?
not bank accounts, but credit card processing.
Wow. So they just said, we're not going to take your payments.
Yeah, they just shut the machines down. They no longer work.
Wow.
And so I had to find the next person. Then about 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago now, Square started a beta program, and I jumped on it. I was lucky enough to get in on that. And although even them in the beginning it was a little iffy. I started with them in August. I got approved. Everything was going great. And then on December 30th, so Christmas week, when I was extremely busy with tourists and stuff, they shut me down on I think it was on a Monday, with no notice.
On Christmas week.
Yeah, nothing. And there's no one you can talk to when you're dealing with these corporations, like trying to talk to someone at Facebook or Google or something. And I finally got an email saying they needed me to download all the COAs for all my products. So that constituted about 400 pages because I had a lot of products, and I had most of the COAs. A couple of them I had to grab, but it came to about 400 pages of 400 documents. Their system couldn't accept that many files. They couldn't figure out a way how I could get them the files that would work with how they operated. I couldn't do a Dropbox or anything like that.
So they asked you for this information, but they didn't have the capability to process it.
So what they had me do was fax it to them. Now I didn't have a fax machine, so I had to print these off and go to a Staples and pay $1 a page. So it cost me like $400 to send these to them. And I pity the poor person on the other end who had these things coming out of the fax machine. But within a day or two, I think they just gave up and said, okay, all right, you're back on. And they turned me back on. So I think it took all of that took about 10 days to get put back in place. And I've had them since, and I've had no problems. And they've actually, one thing I didn't mention is the rates. At the beginning, I was paying almost 15% for some of these credit card processors. Right now, I've got
15%
down to
15%
yeah,
on every transaction.
In the beginning, yeah.
Wow.
It was huge just to be able to take credit cards.
Wow.
And now I'm being treated like a normal business, and you could argue maybe a little bit better. I have an incredible rate from Square. I actually have a human being that I work with now that helps me if I have any problems, and I'm very lucky. So that's my hemp business. But then getting into banking for this, the cannabis side, I was extremely upset when I started hearing some of the rates that they were going to be charging, like 1.5% of deposits. There was one example. And then there were other ones floated, but
that's the FCCU, right? The 1.5%. And then any FCU has sort of a tiered structure based on your license type.
Right, but they're going to be the same place.
Right. Now they're merging.
Yeah. So they're still quoting the 1.5%, at least to me. So what I did when I found this out is there's also a bank in Brattleboro called Brattleboro Savings and Loan that's dipping their toe in.
I see that. I've seen that.
Yeah. I had some communication with them, but as of today, they still aren't able to give me a quote for the rates. But I didn't like what I was hearing and where this was going. To me, it was just usury, and there was no way that the cost that the bank would have would, they would just grab. It was a money grab, in my opinion. Now, I'm sure other people in banking industry would argue with me, but I sent emails to all my politicians in the state. I sent emails to
who are your politicians? Can I stop you there?
Oh yeah, just the reps, that I have my local reps, in the state. And I think I may even send one to Bernie's office, because Bernie's office has helped me in the past.
Really?
And then I sent an email to the banking commissioner of banking, I think is what it's called, as well as I was working with the president of the Brattleboro Savings and Loan and the head banking guy, business banking guy at VSCCU, basically saying, what's this all about, kind of thing, and just clarifying. And with the banking commissioner, it was like, really, is this how it goes? I got a response back from the banking commissioner, and essentially they said, it was a kind of long email, but it basically said, yeah, we know they're doing this. We don't have a problem with it. It costs them more to do it and get over it. So that led me to believe that they're not really protecting the consumers or business people, they're protecting the banks. And again, they might have a very different take on that, but that's my opinion of the response that I got.
I bet
politicians,
I bet they do have a different opinion on
yeah,
that.
the politicians were sympathetic, but they had their hands tied, basically said you can talk to the banking commissioner. So
I've
that's
tried
kind
to
of where
talk to the banking commissioner, and
Yeah.
I'd like to say they have not got back to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm lucky that I got a response.
I don't think they're interested in talking to me.
Yeah. So then what I've done is it's like I persevere. I don't take no for an answer. I like to just find it. Every single thing since I've had this business, I've been told, no, you can't do that. And I've had to figure out a way to do it. And I mean, I could go on with insurance and just finding a payroll company. And that's all just
talk about the insurance a little bit, if you wouldn't
that's
mind.
all just for him. Well, let me just finish up with banking, and then I can get
please
into
do.
that.
Please. Yeah.
So I have found this, with the lack of another word, I'll call it an online bank, a virtual bank. It's called DAMA, DAMA, and I have been approved for them for my retail cannabis. So they only charge 0.5%, and they do have a $500 a month fee. But even with the 0.5% and the $500 fee, it's going to be way less money than I would have to pay one of the local banks, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, because now your money's going to some online bank, right? Instead of staying in Vermont with one of these local credit unions.
Right. And they're going to install it's like a combination safe ATM machine, kind of goes in the back in the safe room. At the end of the day, any cash that comes in the business gets deposited into this machine. It verifies the bills, counts them. It's deposited into my bank account with them the next day. And then because I have that machine through them, they do free armored car pickup to take my cash.
That's
and they're
cool.
monitoring it so they know when to come pick it up. And that way, one thing I was very concerned about is me or my employees, moving cash to the bank, and we would just be a target. Now I don't have to worry about any of that. The rates
What
are lower.
is the name of that? What is the name of that company, Scott?
DAMA Financial.
And they're offering armored car services to transport cash.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So they're like a Brinks.
Yeah, and it might not work for everyone, but this is a solution that worked for me.
Do you know anyone there that I could talk to?
I can get you some emails. Yeah, cool. I can, yeah.
That's
absolutely.
Okay.
So far, so good. I'm getting actually later today, I think I'm doing my final onboarding, but I've gone through multiple stages with them and been approved and keep moving up the ladder. So I believe today is the last stage of my acceptance.
Oh, okay.
That being said, I did open a bank account for my In the Weeds with VSCCU, but that won't be a big deal because I'm not selling to anyone. So there'll be very few deposits because I'm only moving product from there to my own business. So it's mostly a QuickBook transaction, not a real financial transaction.
Do you feel like any of these regulations are overburdensome for a business owner?
Banking, absolutely. I mean, I wish the federal government or the legislature would pass the Safe Banking Act. I don't want them to legalize cannabis. That's another subject, but I'm
with you. I'm actually with you, even though,
I don't want them to federally legalize cannabis because they'll just give it to big pharma and Walgreens, and we'll be all sitting on the sidelines. So that's another subject. But if they would just pass the Safe Banking Act and treat me like a normal business, that would be great. So that leads me into like insurance. So just getting insurance is hell. And when you get it, you pay way more than anyone else would pay. And I found out the hard way, you're not covered for theft. So when I had my CBD business, I got broken into and they stole my hemp flower and a
So
laptop.
so you've been robbed before, Scott.
Yeah. So they broke into my CBD business. They took all my hemp flower and they did take one laptop. But they had to smash glass in the door. They had to smash the glass locked cabinets where I had the flower.
So you have a lot of damage.
Yeah, and they either took it thinking it was cannabis, or they were going to try to pass it off as cannabis, which was a short-term business plan. But when I went to make a claim with the insurance company, they said, well, you're not covered for theft. And stupid me, I thought when you bought insurance and you had a business, that was just kind of part of it. But they said the only way I would be covered for theft is if I had like a direct line to the police station, like the police alarm.
So is that something you're looking at now?
Well, yeah, with the cannabis business, I will absolutely have that with the security company. That's what they're going to be installing. But at the time, I didn't know that. I learned the hard way that I wasn't covered for theft.
So you had to take one on the chin.
Yeah. And, it was also frustrating that I had one of those find my laptop kind of thing. So I was able to tell the police department exactly where it was. And that's where the story ended. No, they did nothing.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there we are.
So this seems like a good time to ask you about your security company, because he just texted me right before this interview. I got a message from Dave Bush saying Scott's a great guy, and I was hoping you could tell us sort of what it's like outfitting one of your facilities with security equipment.
Yeah, so I've met with Dave multiple times. He's also a good guy. Hi, Dave, if you're listening. And his boss, or the owner of the company, Scott. I also met with two other security companies, and they got quotes from all. We ended up going with Mountain View Security or Seacoast Security for a variety of reasons. I mean, he treated me very well, but he was also although one of these other companies was participating in some of the NECANs and stuff, so I would see them there. The third company, which actually was the most local to me, literally down the street, had never approached me, I'd never seen them engage with any type of cannabis event or the cannabis community at all. They did come in the highest price too, but it was just disappointing that they weren't engaging at all. In fact, I had no idea they even did security until someone I knew from a previous life mentioned it.
And that's someone that is close to you down in Brattleboro.
Yeah. But what I really appreciated about Dave and his company is he attended the Vermont Cannabis Solution luncheons, almost every single luncheon. He was at NECAN. He'd come to my store multiple times, and he was living in Maine, so it wasn't easy. So, we developed a pretty good relationship, and in the end, he came in at the right price, and so I went with them.
And so he came to visit you down in
Brattleboro. Oh yeah, multiple times. Yeah,
which is a pretty good haul for Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciated them doing that.
Yeah, and I like Dave. He's a bit of a madman, but I like him. He's a good dude, and he works his ass off, and I really like what he's about.
Yeah, I'm happy with my decision.
Let me ask you this, Scott. Have you had any issues with zoning?
No, I've been very lucky with the town of Brattleboro. They've been supportive. I was very nervous. Well, in the beginning, so when I found out that you had to get a town to opt in, I jumped on that. Like the next day, I contacted the select board and individual selectmen in town and said, what do I have to do to get this on the agenda?
So you're active in the opt-in process.
Absolutely. Yeah. I jumped on that. I wasn't, no one's stopping me. I'm doing this. So I just wanted to make sure I got it on the March agenda. And it was hard because it was in the middle of COVID.
Oh,
But I think in the end, it actually worked to my advantage. But the select board, I attended their meeting via Zoom. I was also attended by a woman in her group. I call them the Reefer Madness people. They have a group with a kind of a benign name like Making Brattleboro Better or something like that. But it's basically Reefer Madness. And she was attending these meetings too. So she, not aggressively, but she definitely did not want me to be able to open. She definitely did not want it put on the agenda for the first March meeting. She wanted to wait another year so that she could go out in the community and dredge up more Reefer Madness. So the select board agreed with me, I believe it was unanimous, and put it on that March meeting. But then that was the challenge. So I had to get people to go out on a Tuesday in March during a pandemic and vote pro cannabis, and you had to live in Brattleboro.
wow.
And I really put myself out there
That's
way
a
beyond.
large order there, Scott.
Yeah, it was way beyond my comfort zone. But anyone who wanted to interview me, put something in the paper, I just did it all. And I took out full page ads for like 6 weeks before the
So
vote.
you've done media before.
Oh yeah. I did a lot. Again, it's not in my comfort zone, but I realized this is what I had to do, and I just pushed for it. And I forget the exact numbers, but it's like 3-1 vote in my favor. And I believe
Wow.
the only other place in the state that had a higher number of voters was Burlington. So I got a lot of people, not me personally, but I will take some of the credit that I got that many people to vote in affirmative for
That's
this.
amazing.
Yeah. And so
That's
by that
quite a
point,
ratio there,
yeah,
Scott.
she couldn't really do anything because it was so overwhelming for the opt-in. So that was great because it gave me a head start, because a lot of other people either didn't understand or didn't react to whatever, and they had to wait a much longer time, for another year, or they had to get a special ballot in their town. And it was challenging, but that was out of the gate. I got approved, and then I went and connected with the planning board, and I attended some planning board meetings by Zoom. I invited the planning board members to my business, whether
Wow.
individually or as a group.
Did they show up?
Some of them, I had 2 or 3 visitors. What I was trying to avoid is tongues wagging without knowing what they were talking about. And I'd rather be transparent. Come in, talk to me, visit my business, ask
Yeah,
me
let's figure
questions.
this out, you know?
Oh yeah. And again, they've been supportive, and I haven't had any real negativity from anyone in the town. I think something that was really helpful for me is I had created Vermont Hempicurean, and they saw that I ran a respectable business, and I was an asset to the community and the downtown business community, and I had a good reputation. And so I
So
was able to play off that.
you set yourself up for success in a
Yeah,
sense.
I think so. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really great to hear that you were well received by the community.
Yeah, so far so good. I can't say that, Brattleboro has been supportive. Now, I'm always wary looking around the corner to see what I might be missing, but I don't have any, no one's been on my case about you can't do this. I haven't had any of that.
I have a note in here, Scott, about free courses from UVM.
Yeah, so I signed up for the 2 free cannabis courses from UVM. I don't remember the exact titles, but one of them's on cannabis agronomy, or growing, cultivation, all that, and the other one is on cannabis chemistry, basically. So I'm looking forward to taking those courses. And unfortunately, the timing is really poor because they basically start the exact same time as I'll be opening the store. But I just I took myself back to college in my late 50s, and because I had originally gone to Northeastern back when I got out of high school as a journalism major, but never
Wait,
graduated.
wait. You're a journalism major.
I was way back
You
when.
didn't fucking mention that, Scott.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah. I initially wanted to be, I wanted to expose all the corruption in the world, and then I realized that journalism was a form of
Okay, we're
corruption.
gonna have to be friends now, Scott.
Yeah.
God damn it.
And I got depressed and I was working in
Wait,
restaurants.
is that my future?
Yeah.
Depression and sadness?
Well, no, I'm not talking clinically depressed. I was just like bummer, you know. I thought I could really change the world, but I couldn't. So I just worked in restaurants, and that's what I did.
Wait, I also was a bartender, but like I got out of that to go into journalism.
Yeah. Well, everyone has a different experience, but then I went back to school at Champlain College. The Black River Produce offered to pay 70% if you got an A in your classes, and I still needed a lot of credits, like 3 years worth of school. And I was the only person in the whole company that took advantage of this, which was kind of odd to me. But anyway, I did that when I was in my late 50s. I got my business degree when I was 60 years old. And not that it will do me any good, but it just always bothered me. I never got my degree. So I'm used to
you're 65 now?
Yeah. The only reason I'm telling you that is I took a whole bunch of courses online while working a full-time high pressure job that took a lot of my time. So I think I can take these cannabis courses and still run my business. And I have Jeremy's a great side man here, so I'm convinced I can do it.
So you got a good team surrounding you.
Yeah.
And as someone, you mentioned this earlier, maybe you're not a grower. How do you go about assembling a team when you're not really you're not a grower? And I don't want to diminish your skills, but how do you assemble a team when you are not the grower?
Well, I'm a big I've managed people for years, and I'm a big supporter of delegating and letting people rise and tapping into their own talents and passions. And I'm lucky that Jeremy's a legacy grower, very passionate about it, really does a great job. He is the one who was instrumental in making the Vermont Grow Barn what it is today, which is turning into a successful business on its own.
Jeremy. Yeah.
And then, just meeting with lots of people, asking lots of questions, I'm lucky. I have two other good employees, Steve and Spencer. Both are, grow, and they're passionate about it. And it's just worked out that I'm able to find the right people and make this happen. I don't know how else to explain it.
Sometimes a bit of luck is good for business, is it not? All right, Scott, look, I've reached about I want to ask you this. I have one more question, and I wanted to ask you, are there any growers here in Vermont that you're sort of excited about, or people that we might see on your shelves in October?
Sure. Well, we've met with quite a few growers so far, and I've had recently a lot more connecting with me. I'm going to be attending a Vermont Growers Association little networking meetup for retailers and growers
on September 10th.
Yeah,
I'll see you there, Scott.
Yeah. But so we've gone out a couple weeks ago. Jeremy and I did a overnight trip and visited some growers, and then we've had people come in to meet with us as well. Some of the names, and I don't want to forget anyone, and I apologize up front if I do, but Family Tree, Bushy Beard, Dan Pomerantz with Rebel Grown, Forbin's Finest, who else? So Off Feast Farm. Those are some of the names.
Ben's a great guy.
But there's others, and again, I apologize if I didn't mention everyone, but we'll be working with as many as we possibly can. A lot of people want to sell to us, which is great. I love that. And we'll support as many as we can, but we may not be able to buy from everyone.
Is it important to you to support Vermont businesses?
Absolutely. I mean, that's was my mission in Vermont Hempicurean. And I think it worked for me because a lot of, CBD stores you go in, it's just a lot of national brands and stuff. And everything I had in there was Vermont product. I had one exception, and it's the Healing Rose. And it's because I really like them, and they were with me from the beginning. They're from Massachusetts, but I let them sneak through. But other
Yeah,
than that, they're
well,
all Vermont.
it's important to support your day ones also,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
if you ask me. And listen, Scott, look, I've reached the end of my questions here.
Okay.
And first of all, I want to thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
And I want to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I always leave the last word for my guests. So I'm going to let you have the last word here.
The last word. I would say follow your passion. Don't let them. Don't accept no without pursuing all your options. That's where I'd leave it.
Fucking hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I like how concise you are, man. I really appreciate that. You don't blow smoke up my ass, and you don't waste my time. You really are well spoken, and I wish you the best of luck in the coming months here. And thank you again for your time, man.
Thanks. Same to you. Have a good day.
Take care, Scott.